Hello, all of my joyful creators and all of my Longmire friends. This is Funday Monday, part 19 of the Longmire Blanket. As you saw in the introduction, we didn't per se have a winner that chose a color for us today because each individual creator who is making the Longmire Blanket needs to look at the 12 yarns that they had chosen as their 12 colorway, and they need to choose the yarn in those 12 colors that is the lightest. So for example, for the blanket that I will be doing for this tutorial, the lightest color that I had in the 12 colors that I had chosen was white. So I will be using white to create the base or backdrop of this next section of the blanket. It will take us a couple of weeks to get it completed, but it will be so well worth the wait. So the first thing we need to do is we need to join that color onto our blanket and chain one. Once you've done that, we'll be ready to get started. So if you need to pause the video and get your color joined on and chain one and get your blanket turned, go ahead and pause the video and do that, and then we'll meet right back up right here where we're left off. So welcome back. You should have your yarn joined on. Before we get started, as you can see, we ended the last section making these beautiful little peaks. But now to move forward, we've got to turn these peaks back into a completely straight line. So that is what we're going to do in this very next row, which will actually be row 113. So to do that, let me get my tails wrapped around here so I can work over them as I'm crocheting these stitches. This chain one in this very first stitch is going to count as a single crochet. Let me try and bring this blanket a little bit closer. I'm going to bring the camera down in a little bit closer so we can actually see what we're doing. And as you can tell, if we had kept going in our little pattern here, this would have been a peak like this one. So right here in the very, very top of this next stitch, that would have been the very center point of a peak. So we are simply going to just slip stitch. And now we're going to start working our way back down this slope here to what we would have called the valley. And so the next thing we're going to do in this next stitch is we're going to create a single crochet. Then in this next stitch, we are going to work a half double crochet. And we're going to do that 3 more times, giving us a total of 4 half double crochets. And that's 2, and now 3, and 4. Okay, so now we're right here at the dip where we did like our 2 together. So we are now going to do a double crochet in both of those stitches. So there's 1 double crochet, and then we're going to go right into the next one and work another double crochet. And you can see how that's starting to give us more of a straight edge going across there. So now we've got to work our way back up this peak here. So we're going to go into the very next stitch and work a half double crochet, and into the next stitch a half double crochet, and into the next stitch a half double crochet, and we're going to work one more half double crochet, giving us 4 half double crochets. Then we're at one more stitch before reaching that center peak, so we're going to do a single crochet in that stitch. And then in the center of the peak here, we're simply just going to do a slip stitch. I don't think I'm in both loops, and I'm not. So let me go back and make sure I go under both loops. And you can see how that is already starting to help shape this back into a straight line. So let's do this again. And let me give my tails a tug here. And then I am going to cut off what is remaining and go ahead and get those out the way. So after we have done the slip stitch in the very center part of the peak, we've now got to come back down our slope. So we're going to do a single crochet in that very first stitch, and then a half double crochet in the next 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And that brings us to our valley. And here are our 2 stitches where we stitched them together. So we're going to work a double crochet in both of those stitches. So 1 and 2. Now we're coming back up the slope, and here's our center stitch. We have 5 stitches here, so we are going to work 4 half double crochets and then 1 single crochet and slip stitch in the peak. So let's do our 4 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to work a single crochet, and that brings us to the top of our peak, and we're just going to do a slip stitch. Okay, and it's still got a little bit of a curve to it, but when we go to add the stitches to the next row, it's going to straighten this out for us. Okay, so let's go back down this next slope together. And we're going to work a single crochet, only 3 half double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. Here we are at our valley again. So we're going to work double crochets into those 2 stitches. So here's our first double crochet and our second double crochet. And now we're going back up. So we're going to work 4 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to work a single crochet into the next stitch, and now we're at the top of the peak. We're going to just do a slip stitch. All right, I'm going to do one more with you, and then you're just going to keep doing this repeat pattern. All right, so we've put our slip stitch in the top of that peak. So in the next one, we're going to work a single crochet. Then we're going to work a half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And now in this valley, we're going to work our 2 double crochets. 1, 2, and then in the next 4 stitches, we're going to work a half double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in this next stitch, we're going to work a single crochet. And in the top of the peak, we are going to create a slip stitch. And that is the pattern that we're going to do all the way across the rest of this row. So go ahead and continue repeating this all the way down to the end of the blanket. When you get to the last peak and you've done your slip stitch, you should have 2 stitches remaining. Stop there, and I will meet up with you when you reach that peak and you have those 2 stitches remaining. So go ahead and pause the video and finish this row, and I'll meet you at the very end and we'll work the last 2 stitches together. We're here at the very end. We have slip stitched into the top of this peak. We have 2 stitches left, so we're just going to work a single crochet into that next stitch and a single crochet into the very last stitch. We're going to chain 1 and turn our blanket. So I'm going to pause this for just a quick minute and get the blanket turned, and I will meet back with you when I have that finished. So we're now at the beginning of row 114, and we are going to simply just work a single crochet stitch in each of the top of all of our stitches all the way across this row. And we're going to actually do this for a total of 30 rows. So we will work a single crochet in each stitch across for rows 114 through rows 143. And I'm just going to work a couple of these stitches so you can begin to see how this is creating this straight edge for us once again to have for our blanket. Now I did have someone ask me if on my blanket doing the ripple stitch from the last section, if it kind of drew the blanket in a little bit, and it did, but not to worry, because as we continue across with these, single crochets to create this straight edge, it's going to help stretch that blanket back to where it needs to be. But also when we put the border on, it will help even it back out. And the reason it does that is because we're creating different stitches and patterns in this blanket. And sometimes it does alter our stitch count, but we always go back and do what we need to do to keep it at the 158, which is what you should have at the end of each of these single crochet rows, is 158 stitches. So I've worked up a couple of those single crochets, and as you can see, it's got a little bit of a slight little curve in it still, but as we continue to work these stitches, especially beginning with the next row, it's going to give us more of that straight effect going across. And so I want you to go ahead and finish working single crochets all the way across this row. When you get to the end, chain 1, turn your work, and continue single crocheting all the way across the row. Again, you're going to do this for a total of 30 rows. So when we finish this section for today, we will have added a complete total of 31 rows to our blanket. I know that sounds like a lot, but when we're just sitting here single crocheting, it should go by rather quickly. Now on those peaks where you did a slip stitch, you might have to wiggle your hook in there just to get it in there to do your single crochet. But it will be much easier on the next row because you'll have just straight single crochets going across. So go ahead and pause this video and work your single crochet stitches across each and every row. Again, from this row all the way to row 143. So you're adding a total of 30 rows of single crochet stitches across each row. I will meet up with you when you get to the end of row 143. Do not fasten off. Even though we will be stopping for today, we are going to continue working with this color a little bit longer, so do not fasten off. But I'll meet up with you when you get there. We have completed 30 rows of working a single crochet in each stitch across each row. Again, do not fasten off. We will continue with this same color in the next section. This does complete this section for today. Be joyful, stay crafty in your own way, and I will see you next week.